I cannot tell you how much I'm looking forward to tonight. I think my first conversation with you, Dave, was outside the Myth and Magic shop when you had just lost your van in catastrophic circumstances in France. And since then, every single conversation we've ever had hasn't been a wasted word. You know, we've realised that this town and what we experience in this town is there's a sense of uniqueness about people, and the fact that we're all bringing a particular piece of the jigsaw to the table. And when we bring that piece of the jigsaw to the table, having been brave enough to just make it as unique and as exclusive as you have, that makes my heart sing. You know, when we realise and recognise that we're having a planetary experience here. You're having an individual experience that is a planetary experience. And so much about that planetary experience has, one, been completely confused, not just by us, but by scientists and by generations of people with huge amounts of misunderstanding tied into that, that we're all starting to unpick it and look at it in a different way. So I'm not going to carry on too much because I just wanted to present that as a forerunner to the talk we're going to have tonight. Dave, have a great night, and
thank you.
I'll see you at the other end.
Bless you.
Oh my goodness me. So, hello ladies and gentlemen. My name's Dave Dobbs, but I'm sometimes known as David Field. So I'm a bit of a confused identity. I'm David Field to all intents and purposes, I suppose. But years ago, I ran for government. We discovered that you could, as a political party, you could have your own members-only free bar. And back in the day when we were dragging a sound system around the country and having these free parties, suddenly we realised that if we just, the criminal justice bill said you couldn't gather unless you're a political party, and then you could gather and have and you have your own political bar, a 24-hour members-only bar. So it was like, So anyway, so I ended up accidentally running for government. Just because we had a political party and there was an election going on, and push came to shove, and it was just like, well, why don't you? And then it was a bit of confusion of what should I be called, because we were doing these Bob parties, which related to Bob Dobbs, and I couldn't go as Bob Dobbs because there was already a Bob Dobbs, so I just went as Dave Dobbs. There was a bit of confusion in the election office, and they were like, well, what's your name? And I was like, well, is it Dave Dobbs? Can I be called Dave Dobbs? And they were like, well, you can't just... you've got to be a commonly known name. And I was there with a bunch of people, and I said, well, am I commonly known as Dave Dobbs? And they were like, yeah! So I just wrote down Dave Dobbs. Of course, I never escaped that name, really. Everything I've ever done is offshoots of Dave Dobbs. But my real name's David Field, and I commonly write in the name of David Field, although I am in two minds. I'm doing an audiobook of this at the moment, of Laughing Gas. And I'm doing it in the name of Dave Dobbs because I've got a lot more people who follow me because of my astronomical models. And I build orreries. That's what I do. I build digital orreries. I'm not an animator, or I'm not any great animator in any way, shape or form. But what I've been doing is I've been utilising software. At the beginning it was really basic Flash software because I wasn't trying to create anything to be amazing. I wasn't trying to produce a final piece of amazing video art or animation art. I was trying to build a calculator to understand all the crazy sightings that we were seeing and isolate the patterns and see if there were patterns in it, because this shot here, when this shot came in on the 21st of June, on the 21st of January 2017, the day, just absolute breathtaking. I don't know if we're getting the best shot of it there. It was now to get to this point, to get to that flyby, For me, it started in 2014. I'd had a crazy dream. Admittedly, it all started in a bit of a crazy dream. I'd written Laughing Gas. I'd written this crazy story about a guy that had, in a crazy vision, had seen his country being used. I published this in 2011. A guy had a crazy vision where he'd seen his country being used as the Trojan horse to break up the European alliance and feed Europe into a war against Russia so it could begin a holy crusade in the Middle East. And so you can imagine, it was such a heavy story. I didn't know how to write this crazy story. But I did write this crazy story. I just got to have to do this. I was going to publish it by 2011. So when 2012 came, I felt like I was emotionally able to deal with what was happening in my crazy little story. You know, this was my little universe back then of completing this book, of saying, listen, we've got this thing coming up and we can preempt it because there's patterns involved. But all started going a little bit. What happened was I had a dream, and in this dream I was being chased by the army, and it was a dream. I was being chased by the army in the back of where I have my caravan in Glastonbury, and a friend of mine jumped out and he said, Dave, it's all right, hide in this, and he gave me something to hide in. And I said to him, I didn't say, why are the army chasing me? I said, where's the sun gone? Where's the sun gone? And I looked up, and my friend looked at me and he said, it's because of that. And I said, what? And I looked up and I was shot out of my body and I was out in space and I was just looking at the earth. There was no light hitting the earth, and I thought, where's the sun? And I looked round and I saw this planet coming towards me, this massive planet, and it flew past me. And as it flew past me, I just heard the words, this is what the fuss is all about. And I just saw it go towards Earth. And then I saw a crest of light appear on the left-hand side of Earth. And Earth just moved out the way of this massive object perfectly. And it just sailed past Earth. And I came out of this vision. I went running to my computer and I went running to the space I learned to open when I wrote Laughing Gas. And I said, tell me that misses. And the words I got were, yes, it misses. It is not human karma. It is deemed you're not a race of war. But it is deemed that you are a race subverted with war. And that will now change. And everything I'm going to show you from here on in, I can tell you that all of this research, everything I've done has always been with a focus that we get through this. That we are not the enemy of this world, we're not the enemy in this situation, that we are being subverted constantly, that people I meet all around are beautiful, wholesome, amazing people with good intentions. And that's the greater majority of the people that have met me in my life and helped me from one place to another in moving forward, that the world overall is good. People are good. And that we have good intentions. And we may make mistakes and what have you, but our intentions are good, and my intentions in this have always been good, that this is a cosmic arrival. Anyway, I didn't know what to do with this dream, and a friend of mine was turning 50 and he was a magician and he lived up in the Pyrenees, and he said, come to the Pyrenees. So I thought, I'll go up to the mountains. That would be a wonderful place to get a view and see and get up 6 o'clock every morning and see something next to the sun, see something obscure. But of course, what would actually happen is all the my Skywatcher subscribers that would start rolling in as I began my channel up in the Pyrenees weren't anywhere near me. They were all either in New Zealand, Brazil, kind of like Argentina. They were up in Alaska, in British Columbia. They were all north and south of the ecliptic by a long way, where there was less solar bombardment, and so they could get a better view of what was in our night sky that we cannot see because of the blazing sunlight that hides what we're seeing. And so these things very rarely come into view. Now, you'll notice right now that we've got Grendavik the fault line of Grendavik has just opened up. That's not one of the views of the, but I believe this is that the water or the fault line? I'm just trying to work out, or maybe that's the fault line, or that might be the wall. I'm not too sure which one's which. I'm not going to go forward on the shot right now, because you're just going to basically see a massive lava wall, and we're getting used to seeing these massive fault lines in Iceland. Now Iceland's just gone off, and it's very, very significant because I've been learning to predict volcanoes very accurately for quite some time. For the best part of 5 or 6 years, I've been successfully predicting volcanoes. As in, when we got to last year, we got into October, there were 61 volcanoes simultaneously erupting. You know, I turned up in August in America in 2017 on the day of a massive flyby, and I'm going to show you that image. But we were seeing big volcanoes going off. In 2018, I remember when we got to we got to September, and I'd made videos saying you cannot tell me with all we've seen and the patterns that we're seeing. You know, because what I've basically seen is when I started researching this Planet X, thinking, is there going to be a planet out there? Or am I going to see it? I didn't see anything up in the daylight sky or the night sky until August 2015. But what I saw was something next to the sun, and it was non-conclusive. But what I was getting was all these shots of these twin-tailed objects. It started with Comet. In 2011, we were calling it Comet Eleni. And then we went into 2012, and 200 days later, we'd see Comet, maybe it was Ison. I think it was Comet Ison. And then after that, we were going into Comet C and whatever the name. You know, I can remember in 2020 when my mum died, bless her, on the 20th of July, we were standing up on the hill on the 20th of July and watching the comet. We were calling it Comet Nearwise. All of these comets were occurring 200 days apart, one after the other, so much so that it was getting to the point where that first comet I showed you, I predicted that. And when it turned up on the day after Trump's inauguration, on the 21st or on the day of Trump's inauguration, and seen over from the Mexican skyline, absolutely filled up the skyline. On the front covers, it was El Dragon. It was just a massive thing. It came with an 8.0 earthquake in Papua New Guinea. And
your previous slide was labelled the 7th of October.
Oh, that's because that was one of the
last 7th of October, with all the volcanoes. Was that what was happening when?
No, that. If I'm talking about this one, well, this one here, I'm talking about this is just happening right now, and this volcano has just started going off. It's been going off considerably at periodic times, but I just want to stay with 2018 because we're going to arrive back to here. But in 2018, I'd made the video saying you cannot tell me there's not going to be oceanic anomalies. And then we'll get the tsunami in Indonesia on the 28th of September. Krakatau goes bang. The whole side of the caldera collapses. It causes a tsunami. And then in December, the whole top of Krakatau disappears. By the time we go to 2019, we're seeing 8 to 9 volcanoes simultaneously going off at the same time. 2019, I go into a talk at Extinction Rebellion, and I said, listen, I really love what you're talking about, a people's assembly and a citizens' assembly, not just a corporations' assembly, which is what we seem to have at the moment. I said, but what I struggle with is when I see a volcano like our local small volcano going bang and producing, like Etna or Stromboli, producing 80 million tons of carbon dioxide in a single eruption, and is considered a small volcano, something like Popocatépetl in Mexico, or Cheveluch on the Kamchatka Peninsula, or these volcanoes, or Iceland when it goes bang on the 26th of February 2010. Iceland had a very different type of eruption it's having now. On the 26th of February 2010, we have like a Strombolian style eruption, like a high altitude eruption, but not Strombolian style is like a small, a bit, but what we consider relatively big eruption, not the sort of things that go up, 7 or 8 miles into the sky. That's what happened on the 26th of February. It was a massive eruption on a single moment. That's absolutely millions and millions of tons of magma, rock, molten rock that's going to go up into the sky. You can imagine throwing millions of tons of rock into the sky. You'd be running, thinking it's going to come back down and it's going to crush everyone. But it doesn't. It turns into mostly carbon dioxide. 80 million tons of carbon dioxide is a small volcano. And we're talking about 1 million tons of carbon dioxide generated by, say, the jets, and 1 million tons of carbon dioxide. And we're kind of going down these carbon stories when there's this other massive story that's producing massive amounts of carbon dioxide. So then we jump forward to, we see 8 or 9 volcanoes, and I think, now at that time it was usual to go onto the internet and watch rivers of cars being washed away on the internet. Rivers of cars. You go onto the internet here, you'd see videos in some country or other. Now you're going onto the internet and you're seeing whole towns, whole cities going into the water. It wasn't like 2 years ago, we were getting up to 20 volcanoes simultaneously going off. I was like, my God, it's doubled the biggest ever. Last year, 61 volcanoes simultaneously going off. Now, like I say, when we'd seen in 2018, we'd seen the flooding that was happening, say, in China. Now, China's interesting because you can imagine what's been happening in the Pacific Basin is that the Pacific Basin from the Kamchatka Peninsula, which is the very northern tip of the Pacific, the arm of Russia that comes down, which has got all these volcanoes on it. And that leads down to an underwater chain of volcanoes that leads all the way down to Hawaii. 4,600 kilometre long chain of underwater volcanoes that only even came on the map in 2001. Simply because it was a strategic hiding place for submarines, supposedly in the Korean War. So it didn't really arrive, and everyone was hiding around all these different places and trying to work out all their strategic kind of hiding places. So it only arrived on Google Maps in about 2000, 2001. But nonetheless, that whole fault line is where the blob, that we talk about the blob, this area of the Pacific that is getting super warm, that has been getting super warm, where all this moisture is now coming up from an ocean that is going massively high in temperature. It's going off the radar. Atmospheric temperature hasn't risen more than 1 degree in nearly 100 years, and yet the water temperatures are rising in some places nearly 20 degrees. Massive increase in water temperature. Well, that whole fault line under the ocean is getting more and more excited. Now, what's happening in 2018 with all the volcanoes around what we've been calling the Ring of Fire, around the Pacific, that have been sending up all of these particles into the air. All of these particles, you could imagine so many more volcanoes going off. These particles go into the air, the moisture condenses, the moisture coming from these boiling ocean condenses on these particles. Moisture that would take weeks, if not months, to kind of distribute that precipitation around the globe. Is suddenly all being picked up by these particles from these massive increase in volcanoes. They're drawing in massive volumes of water. And then as soon as these airstreams go over land, they're dumping the entire volume in one fell swoop into superstorms happening anywhere and everywhere, and literally global. It's a global phenomenon happening right now, increasing off the radar. Now this, believe it or not, is normal for this Earth. Earth is, if you were looking to terraform a planet, believe it or not, you'd be looking for a planet with volcanoes. You'd be looking for a planet with a massive source of carbon dioxide to feed a biological kind of like ecosystem as we understand it on this Earth. That's what you'd be dependent on. You wouldn't be alarmed by volcanoes. You'd be bowing to them. You'd be taking flowers and placing them at the volcano as like an altar. So we can't be scared of volcanoes because we are dependent on them. But we cannot build an ecological system if we deny volcanoes because they interfere with our other narratives that we want to be carbon zero. When we can see that I talked about the earthquake that happened on the 26th of February. The volcano, the Iceland volcano that happened on the 26th of February 2010. And then on the 27th of February 2010, we get the massive 8.8 earthquake in Chile. And then we go 1 year and 13 days forward, and we have Fukushima occur. And though they're 2 years apart, there's a 13-day difference in astronomical position of these two massive seismic events. And that's where, all of those who talked about 2012, do you remember in the days of 2012 and the Mayan prophecies and all of these wonderful ideas that came out in 2012? Well, I personally had no idea it was an astronomical event occurring. I had no way to see that. I had no way to actually conceive that. But I'm going to jump forward now to, this is Kilauea. This was Kilauea the day before yesterday, I believe. 13 hours ago. I'm just going to click that and just see what that was June the 4th.
Where's that?
This is Kilauea. This is in Hawaii. This is on the Big Island in Hawaii. Now notice that we're talking about a line here. We're talking about a very different. In 2018, on May the 4th, 2018, Kilauea went off. And when it went off, it was unusual because it was the first of the long duration volcanoes. So it went off in May the 4th, 2018. It went off for about 5 weeks. And it was just like, oh my goodness me, we haven't seen a long duration volcano like that since kind of Vesuvius went off in 1944.
What was that?
Vesuvius. In 1944. Now, when we go to 2021, we jump forward to 2021 and we saw, remember at the beginning of 2021, we saw the Icelandic volcano go off. And when it started going off in about kind of like late February, early March 2021, it carried on going and it went on longer than any volcano that we'd ever known about in our little epoch, going back to kind of Galileo. The only record that hadn't been broken in terms of a long duration volcano was in Galileo's time. It was about 1596, 1598. Now we discovered the first dwarf planet in 1596, 1597. And then we're going to get to 1610 and we're going to have Galileo saying, I can see the moons of Saturn with a 30 times telescope, like a really basic 2 lenses bound in a piece of leather, a really basic, like the worst iPhone, the first iPhone, the maximum zoom of the first iPhone. We're not talking about any super advanced piece of technology. The sort of thing to see the moons of Jupiter now, we'd expect to take a serious bit of kit. Have you seen anyone looking at Jupiter and what the type of telescope they drag up the top of the tour? They're big, they've got to get them in the back of pickups to get them up there. And yet he saw it with a 30 times telescope. He said he could see it, but he said he could see it right there. Then in 1613 he discovers Europa, the moons of Jupiter. And then lo and behold, we're going to get Kepler, who's going to now turn up at this very same period, and he's going to give us the rules of orbital mechanics, the 3 rules of orbital mechanics. Now I'm not going to try and teach you the fundamental rules of orbital mechanics according to Kepler right now, because it would make it complicated. But I am going to try and define a little tiny piece of it. A little tiny piece of it. Because when you think of our sun, you think of the sun static in the middle and all the planets going round in a nice circle. And that's kind of how we have it. We have these idea of perihelion and aperihelion, as in something that comes closer to the sun and something that comes further to the sun. But you can imagine, I want you to picture that I'm the sun now, and that I'm moving forward. And that we're adding motion to the sun now. And as I'm moving forward, you can imagine that if Earth is going to come round the front edge of the sun and come round and then go back again, as it comes round and the sun's moving forward, as it comes round, at this point, the sun's moving and it are moving in the same direction. So it passes the sun, it passes me at a slower rate. Then when it starts going back the other direction, it's going at a much faster rate. It's like going down the motorway. You're going down the motorway and you overtake someone travelling the same direction. You overtake them at a slower speed than if you go down the opposite way and they're going one way and you're going the opposite way. You're going to overtake them at double the speed. That means that affects the orbit. It's like you're going past something centrifugally. When you're going past it and you're travelling in the same direction, the centrifugal energy, the energy that throws you out, is slower than when you're going down the opposite side. So we get this kind of interesting dynamic that Kepler brings into orbital mechanics, that when you have a primary or something that's being orbited, moving along, you come along, you swing closer to the orbital mass as you come in, and then you get slung further out as you go down the other side. So we end up with this point where we come closer, like a slingshot around something, and then we get shot off because the primary has motion. If it was just static, everything would be as you see it in the model of all the planets going in a pretty circle all the way round. So we don't really, in our current model, have a notion of a forward moving sun. Now if I told you that when we...
Doesn't the whole thing move forward? I mean, the galaxy.
Yeah, I can imagine it's all in a state of movement.
Yeah.
And so when we get to these ideas of Kepler, we come to 1596, 1597, we discover the first dwarf planet. We've got Kepler turning up, we've got Galileo, all these people turning up, seeing these incredible things. Galileo says he can see the big blue object right there. And he's put under house arrest. He's never allowed to speak to another member of public, who kind of like is a little bit of confusion until we go, from the first dwarf planet, we go for about 84 years forward. And we're going to come to Isaac Newton. It was a very interesting time, 1681, where we see, supposedly we boil it down to Halley's Comet, we say, but actually what was happening was incredible sightings of phenomena. And then we're going to go forward again. We're not going to go forward exactly, we're going to go for 100 years, but actually the discovery of this big blue object that supposedly we're going to call Uranus. This comes out, William Herschel, it was actually his sister, I believe, who actually discovered it, but he wasn't allowed to give credit to ladies at the time, so it was passed over to William Herschel, who was the canon who pushed this idea and gave it this 84-year period. Then we're going to go to 1846, and we're going to discover a big blue planet. But this time we're not going to say it's got an 84-year orbit. We're going to say it's got 2 times, or close to 2 times 84. 182, it's a 165-year orbit. Almost exactly. Oh, sorry, Neptune. I'm talking about Neptune, not Pluto. Apologies. We're going to call it Neptune. And then we're going to go 84 years forward. And we're going to say it's got not 1 times 84, not 2 times 84, but 3 times 84. You get a prize. You get a prize for that.
Woohoo!
It wasn't me.
Oh, was it you who said that 84? Was it you who just said that? Was it you who just said that?
Thank you anyway.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. You was done. On that coin,
I was just thinking
in that plastic cover that has never been opened since it was manufactured in the mint, if I can find it. Sorry about this.
please. On the back side.
We got it. Hopefully I've got it. I never know how these talks are going to quite go, so I kind of get everything lined up, and then it all kind of like, hopefully, it must be on that one. There it is. Okay, so that's what we're looking at here. I'm just going to zoom that in, and can I ask you to send it around the audience and let this lovely lady have it back when it finally comes back to her, because it's a minted, it's a Sir Isaac Newton commemoration coin, and what it has on it is a system that you actually live in, not the model that you've been told you live in. So we've got here is we've got what I'm assuming is Saturn and Jupiter, or Jupiter and Saturn, whichever way you want to see them, orbiting what we could assume is the Sun, but it's actually what our Sun really orbits. And this is our Sun that's interacting in the whole thing. It's a very...
That's geocentric, now.
It's whether you would call it a binary system, whether you would call it a... It's the system that it seems that Isaac Newton came up with to keep us in a this story that exists outside of a, like I say, when you think of a comet, you think of a. I'm going to explain how I got to this rather incredible place, and why I believe that they don't want you to know where the Sun is going. That this whole system has been there to take one primary thing from you, a sense of cosmic direction, away from your Sun. Because when we connect where our Sun is going, we are ultimately connecting with the cosmos in a very, very different way. We're doing a very distinct mapping, a very distinct cosmic connection to the cosmos. We're not throwing a story at the cosmos. We're not throwing a belief. We're aligning with the cosmos. The first person who ever gave me that idea was Nassim Haramein. I don't know if anyone follows Nassim Haramein.
Lovely.
Where his original models were. Let me come to. These were some of my. These were some of the early models when I was playing with Nassim Haramein's original models of showing the Sun moving down. See how the Sun is moving down, like it would be heading down itself on the South Pole, heading down, rather than going out on the plane. We've got them spiraling down in this case, and all the planets following down. And these were the original models. And the reason I built these original models was everything I could see was that all these flybys, these myriad of flybys, the most incredible shots, many I'm going to show you today as we go through, but how could I elongate this whole thing? Imagine the old-fashioned kind of views, the Zakar Sitchin. I don't know if you've heard of Zakar Sitchin and the 12th planet and all these old ideas. You know, Zakar Sitchin was very influenced by was it Robert Harrington or Richard Harrington? But I always get the Harringtons and the Carringtons mixed up, which is an easy mistake. But Harrington was the guy who basically in the 70s, he was massively influential on the work on Zakar Sitchin, who came up with the 12th planet. And he was the one who found, I believe it was Charon, the biggest moon, supposedly, of Pluto. And so doesn't move. This is not how it moves, but I had to explore this because you can imagine we were having all these flybys, and how could I elongate these flybys to allow for all the sightings that we're having? Imagine you've got this idea of a 3,600 year orbit of an object, and it's taken 3,000 years to come back to where it was 3,000 years before, and it's finally coming in to its kind of big flyby around our Sun. It's taken 3,600 years to finally come back, and it vroom, vroom, and it's gone. And we're like, hang on, I'm trying to drag that out. You understand? Hang on, I've got a whole line of flybys that I've got to slot in here. How the hell am I going to slot those flybys in the heliocentric model that we live in, where the sun is the centre of everything, the biggest player of all, and everything orbits the sun, which so it's made of really heavy stuff. It's made of, hang on, it's made of hydrogen going into helium. It's made of the lightest element on the periodic table, and it's supposed to be the biggest player. We've got something out there that has fused, gone from hydrogen and is no longer fusing into helium and throwing out helium and photons. We've got something that's gone fused higher and higher up the periodic table. One proton, one neutron, one electron, coming together to make two protons, two neutrons, two electrons, or a hydrogen helium atom, and then two of those coming together to form the next on the periodic table, and to something very dense, constantly fusing together to finally producing like a dwarf planet where it's pumping out not photons but ions, like ions, like heavy metal, as in not heavy as in radioactive compounds, but spewing out iron. Something that's really dense. That is not the story of our sun. Our sun is light. In every sense of the meaning, it's made of the lightest atoms on the periodic table. We cannot place it in the centre, be the heaviest thing in the story. It doesn't work. And so when we I had to explore this, I had to elongate this and everything else like that. And then, actually it is on that video actually. And then, this is a... Is it going to turn up? Sorry about this, maybe not the... Maybe it's that one. That one. It's not the clearest, I'm afraid, and there'll be more. Because that looks so vague. I'm sorry, but if I make it smaller, and hopefully I'll get another shot of it, but it's not a very clear shot of it, I'm afraid. I don't know what to do about that, but that's on my channel anyway. This one, you'll see it repeatedly, and what it was I'd said look out for it on the... If we came to 2019, we knew we were going to get the volcanoes going off. There was it went up to we were 2019. It was 9 volcanoes simultaneously going off. I was like, man, it's really building up. And I said, look out for it. And when we saw it from Mexico, from a webcams to Mexico shot. It was exactly the day I was expecting it to come into view. But what it was the whole tail was coming in and going back out. It had come in and gone round something, and our sun was nothing to do with its orbital story. It was clearly orbiting something else. It was coming in just as I was expecting it to come in, but it had come in and gone out. Its relationship, its orbital relationship was with something over here.
So this is the sun.
No, this is our sun here. This thing is coming in, what's looking like it's coming in towards our sun, but it actually keeps going on and going round something over there. I'd postulated that point for so many years, for probably 4 to 5 years. And then we started getting all these sightings on the other side of the sun that didn't make any sense with my model. My model was falling apart. I had been forced, when this shot came in, it was everything I was looking for. It was just like, oh my goodness me. And what you're seeing here, even though it's very blurred there, and we're seeing, actually I'm going to show you what that looks like, because it's so, because of the internet connection via my phone, it's falling apart a little bit on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you I'm going to show you what that kind of looks like on Oh, excuse me, trying to get it up. Did I get it? Well, there he is. So we're going to come forward to 1939 on this model. Now this is going to be this model took me a very, very long time. It took me years to understand this model, and it's going to be. Actually, I'm going to start it here. We might as well, because it's we're going to start it in 262. So I mathematically calculated 262 to being the point. I'd calculated to actually be 274 when we'd had 3 days of dark, when we'd have had an event like 3 days of darkness, earthquakes across Asia, earthquakes across Africa, earthquakes across Europe, the downfall of the Roman Empire, the kind of like the formation of the Roman Empire in Rome to become the Roman Catholic Church after migrating from Rome and moving to Constantinople. In that period we say in 262, this is the period where we say the Goths sacked Rome. This is that period, but in actual reality Rome was, first of all, it had famines, it had plagues, and then the volcanoes went absolutely crazy, and then the earthquakes came, and then it came famine and disease, and then the Europeans moved in when they were on their knees, took back all that they'd taken. For 1,000 years they'd ruled by decimating, and then they were decimated by an event that happened. Now, I had this thing where I'd written down, I was in the south of France and I'd got this number down, and if I'm actually honest with you, I thought some gorgeous lady had left me her telephone number. I really did. And then I looked at it, and then I do a lot of this Breton dancing, and I kept meeting this French girl that was just the most incredible dancer. And anyway, I was trying to get on with my astronomical models, but I do love dancing. And when I saw her number, I thought, oh no. And then I looked at the number again, and I just looked at it, and it said it was like 15. Oh my God! I made a video. In the video, I said a miracle's just happened, and this number, it was like 15, whatever it was, and it was basically the time I had for the 1500 flyby, when I was trying to work out when all the earthquakes and all the volcanoes go off, and I build these astronomical models to allow things to move, and then I copy and paste them into the future, and I copy and paste them into the past to see when all the sequence of earthquakes, and see if it's like a calculator. I'm just seeing by an astronomical model whether or not I can find whether things tie up, whether things link up, using these kind of like
algorithms.
Yeah, using basic patterns that we can see in terms of actually running a cycle. And we can project that into the forward, into the future, and into the past, and see, I wonder if there was a massive event in 262. And then you go into the Edinburgh Encyclopedia, and you think, oh, what happened in 262? And it was one of those days where I just thought, because I got it down as 274, and then because of this number, I thought, well, maybe this number is incorrect, and maybe something's telling me I need to kind of readjust my numbers and take this into consideration. So I just went to 274, and I'm minus 12 years, and I came up with 262, and I put 262 into my kind of like digital version of my Edinburgh Encyclopedia, and it just came up with 3 days of darkness, earthquakes all across Asia, all across Europe, all across Africa, and I was just like, I found it. That meant I found that when I laid it out and I realised what happened was, this is 262. This is when we were right, the same thing is happening right now as we are at this point here. Our sun is next to a very big dwarf planet.
A big what?
A dwarf planet. Or a dwarf sun, whatever you want to call it. A big iron-spewing object that's very, very dense. And it has what Robert Harrington called called Charon, what Galileo called Europa. This big blue object that basically was the Roman pantheon, the big Roman pantheon, the thing that they thought they had all power over, that they were doing everything right for, and then suddenly, you know, the Romans are decimated by this event. And then, so what we're going to go forward? We're going to go forward here. Earthquakes across Europe, Africa and Asia, 3 days of darkness. I'm just going to move that out of our way so it's a little bit less. And and so begins the Roman Catholic Empire. Now you'll notice that if I just go forward a little bit on that, and we're seeing that they're getting further and further away. That was their closest point, 262. Now they're really quite far away, and I wonder if I can.
Also another one, you've got the sun and
Let me just pull that down like that and just see if I can get that a little bit more in screen so we can see the date. And then what the bits that are difficult to see. Can you see that date up there?
740.
Oh, you little rascal. Okay, so yeah, so hopefully you've got that bottom bit there as well. We're going to keep that going. So we're going up to 700 years after Christ.
What does that
800
say?
years.
That word that's going down.
Yeah.
So this one here,
Sun,
and this one.
yeah. What's
So in it, I've called it Herculobus. And Herculobus. And you're going to see why I called it Herculobus in two shakes. So we're coming up to 1,000 years after Christ now, or just about, and we're right on the opposite side. And we're going to come to, we're going to start getting to 1200, and we start entering these points where we're starting to get these views of this system. And these unusual kind of we're seeing unusual movements in star systems when we get to this point. Notice how I've tried to incorporate Kepler's rules into this. How they come much closer to this point, but they're going much further away because the Earth, the object that we're moving around here is also moving forward. So now we're coming to the Copernicus time, where Copernicus, though we wouldn't hear about Copernicus till kind of like almost 70, 80 years after Galileo.
Before you go on, could I just ask you, what is Herculobosus?
We're going to come to that in 1939. You're going to reveal to you Herculobus, for all intents and purposes, is Jupiter. Well, we're going to come to that. Is Jupiter. So Nicholas Copernicus. This is the time when he's coming up with his theories. It's almost like 84 years, ironically, before.
It happened in Greece.
Did it indeed?
Hundreds of years before that. Around about sort of Platonic time.
Okay.
Or Aristotle time, Greek time. There was a Greek guy who postulated that.
Okay.
I think Copernicus was in touch with those ideas.
No, I could believe, because there was massive debate. It was all in debate. There were so many different ideas and theories of how the sun moved and everything else like that. So he was the one who postulated. The first one who postulated, but he obviously released the work years later on his deathbed, because he would have been burnt alive for postulating even a heliocentric model. And so then we're going to come forward to. We notice that we're getting closer and closer. So La Palma, this is when La Palma erupts. We start getting the big, longest duration volcano ever recorded until 2021. Not the Iceland volcano. We're all seeing the Iceland volcano, the long duration volcano that goes off at the beginning, round about the beginning of March, January, February, beginning of March, and it just goes off. It breaks all the records apart from this eruption in 1585. And just when it stops, what starts erupting in 2020 in August, September? La Palma. It goes off and breaks all the records of any long-duration volcano we've ever observed. Even the last two eruptions we've had of the Iceland volcano and subsequent eruptions in Kilauea, on the Big Island in Hawaii. There are different types of eruptions because now we're not. This was a pyroclastic flow. This was a flow of magma that just keeps coming out. It's almost like something is pulling on the magma in Earth, like the moon pulls on the oceans of Earth. Not like the result of some kind of seismic burst or some CME or some kind of like shift in mantles. We're talking about a constant long duration, but we haven't got a model for that in our astronomical mindset of seeing how something could come next to Earth and be travelling right next to Earth and constantly pulling on Earth, travelling parallel with Earth, looking like it's static in the sky because it's travelling exactly with Earth, because we haven't built or haven't got a model of that. We don't even have motion for our suns. Because what we've done is, ever since we've created every planet you're given, every one of them, they all say, if you look at, we're going to look at Jupiter. Jupiter's got a perihelion, which suggests its perihelion point to our sun defines, like we're seeing, as you see these things coming around here, it defines where the sun is going. If Jupiter comes around its perihelion point coming around the front of the sun, imagine you've got a car and you're going to put a caravan on the back of the car. In the same sense, like a comet and a tail. You're not going to think, I've got a hobby caravan, I'm going to put it on the back of the car like that. Or I've got a clubman, so I'm going to put it onto the side of the car. And I've got and I've got this other little kind of trailer which I just use for my old Cortinas. I'm going to put that on the mid quarter, and I'm going to put the other caravan that carries the whatever, the kids and all the rest of it. I'm going to put that on the front. The people are like, no, there's one tail end, just like on a comet. There's one tail end. If we're going to have a perihelion point, a point where we're going to come around the closest point of the sun, all the planets are going to come around the same front end. It's kind of logical. You can only have one front end of a moving object. And yet when you're going to bring every new planet in and you're going to say it's got a different perihelion point and a different, implying that the sun's going in this way, it's going in this direction, but for this planet it's going in this direction, and for this planet it's going in this direction. And you're like, guys, you need to get together and kind of work this out and decide which way, because all of us are sitting here and not having a clue which direction our sun goes. Some of the smartest people that ask the greatest questions have absolutely no clue on a cosmic level where they're going. Imagine trying to map that, and you're just like, you can imagine for me, when I built these astronomical models, I thought, which way does the sun go? And I was just like, yeah, Google, which way does the sun go? You're going on and you're like, hang on, you're saying it's going, and you're saying it's going, and you're saying it's going in that direction. And then I just want to build an astronomical model here, I just want to get on with it. Someone please give me an idea of which way. And suddenly you realise that no one knows. No one's talking about it. Everyone's got various different ideas. Every main player has basically kind of gone along, and they've kind of missed this kind of idea that we need to know which way our sun's going to make our astronomical models work, to shamanically kind of like define our cosmic direction in the scheme of things. And so suddenly I realised when I was building this model that this was what I was coming to. So this is Galileo's time. We're just about to come into Galileo's time. He's about to see a big blue object, and like I say, 1596, the first dwarf planet. And then we're gonna come forward to Kepler's time. These are all the same time. We're all seeing the same thing, all working out orbital mechanics. We've got all this information coming in somewhere. We're seeing something coming in to our night sky. Now we're coming to Isaac Newton, the 16 incredible shots came in at this time. People were looking at these phenomena in the sky and just saying, what the hell's causing that? And then we're going to come to, I guess, 1781, is it? 1781, and William Herschel's going to, well, his sister's going to say, oh, we've got this big blue object, blah, 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 this is what it is. Now, you can imagine that we could turn around and say that this was Jupiter, just Jupiter turning up again, and throw it into a different story, because, ironically, there's no planet in all this that's got an 84-year orbit. So then what's going to happen is,
Hang on a minute. What did you just say? There's no planet with an 84-year orbit?
there's no planet with an 84-year orbit. We're going to get to that. We're going to get
Uranus's orbit?
84 years. Neptune's going to be 2 times 84. Pluto's going to be 3 times 84. You know, it's going to be like, okay, so this is getting a little bit like, what is this big blue object that we keep knowing? I mean, how many times have you gone out and said, "God, Uranus looks lovely today"?
So,
How many times have you gone out in the night sky and said, "Oh, Uranus looks lovely today"? But then we go forward and we come to the time of Neptune, 1846. This is all the time, also the same time, ironically, that we're seeing the moons of Jupiter again, of Saturn again. We're like, wow, how come these guys keep turning up in pairs? Why do we keep seeing the moons of Saturn when we're seeing the moons of Jupiter at the same time? Like this, and then we get the Doppler effect, 1844. But do you remember 2018? Who remembers when we were all seeing, it was a sensation. We were all seeing Jupiter, huge and massive. Everyone's just like, why has Jupiter gone bright blue? Oh my God, the most incredible things. The electric universe theory. Oh, well, that's because the plasma charge, it's gone super positive. Oh my God. And the Doppler effect. What did the Doppler effect? It said that when you look at an object, then it appears like it's right there, big and blue. To the foolish-minded, it looks like it's right there. Like Galileo thought it was right there. It was right there, but of course it can't be right there because that would contradict the standard model.
always a good thing to do.
You know, always a good thing to do, but for a long time, if you wanted to contradict the standard model, you'd have to stand on a big pile of sticks and it would be a heated debate. You know what I mean? And so people, and even now you're the laughing stock, so it's just like, so it can't be. So what happens when a big blue planet turns up on the wrong side of the solar system again? Jupiter? No, can't be Jupiter. Of course it can't be Jupiter, because it's on the wrong side of the solar system. So what you got? Uranus. Oh, Uranus. I see. Of course, yes. I often look out and see Uranus. What a wonderful planet. And then 84 years later, a big blue planet turns up. You're like, Uranus. Of course, it's on the wrong side. Not Uranus, not Jupiter. No, Uranus on the wrong side. What are we going to call it? We're going to call it Neptune. Then we're going to go 84 years later, and we're going to kind of like, and a big blue planet's going to turn up. But the problem is that you've got, all these kids are now picking up the astronomical apparatus that I use to build my models is called Universe Sandbox. And Sandbox is dedicated to making gaming software. It's animation stuff that enables kids to build kind of like, and then they take all their kind of their stuff and they feed that into kind of like motion capture systems and stuff like that. So their body movement can actually drive all these movements without them having to do complicated. The computers are getting cleverer and cleverer. So they built and they dedicated a package called Universe Sandbox for building solar systems. And you can do collisions and you can do all these wonderful things and you can build these whole complex systems and use and program in very easily Newtonian science and play with all these different ideas and explore Kepler's dynamics and you can do kind of collisions and calculate orbits and you can then build layers. It's a fantastic... it makes my computer huff and puff, and I'd love to be able to take, right now, load the standard model onto my computer and show you what all the kids who build our current contemporary astronomical model have to do.
Can I just ask you something?
Let me just finish that sentence. They have to build static sun models, all of them. No one can build our astronomical model with a moving sun. As soon as you add motion to the sun, the whole thing falls apart. Planets can't catch up with the sun quick enough. They all bunch up around the front. They're all colliding against each other. It's an absolute shit show. You cannot make the standard model work with motion. So we keep inventing this big blue planet, pushing them further and further away, and we're left with a dumb model that the kids look at and just think, this is utterly ridiculous. These are kind of like, we're living not in the Victorian days. We're living we're living in the kind of we're in a 500-year-old model. And when we look at, say,
Could I just say
yeah,
that
I think we should go through to the end and then have Q&A at the end.
it's just what the people who have programmed it put into it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the people that programmed it are mostly kids, and they're just trying to make it work, and they're asking the same questions. They're like, how do I make this work? So look, this is a very interesting quote, because I'm going to show you some more sensational data, but I thought, because you are, if I'm honest, you are an intelligent looking crowd that would appreciate a piece of good discourse before we just dive into sensational shots.
Should we have Q&A at the end?
Yeah.
So that you can just stay in a flow?
Yeah,
and
that's a
then
lovely
we'll
idea.
cover
Thank you for
everything.
that. Yeah, try and stay with me. I promise you, you'll probably find that I will answer most of your questions. So this was a quote. This was put up by a guy who used to be a wrestler, and then he became a wrestling commentator. And his name is Gregory Israel. And he's like me. He gets data and he puts it very eloquently together. And he discovered this, and when he discovered it, he posted it in 2017. And it was from one of the team members of the New Horizons satellite team that was sending the satellite out to find Pluto. And now I got this in 2017. Now when I turned up in 2017 in America, that first flyby that I'd shown you, I predicted that with many other flybys. And I'd been predicting flybys after flybys, and they were always quite small. And it was like a little comet until the first one I showed you. And then it was just like, what is that? It came on the 20th of January, 2017, or the 21st of January 2017, remembering that the tsunami that happened here happened on the 20th of January. Not remembering, because we're going to get to a date in a second, coming in the future on the model, and that's going to be the year the Second World War began, 1939. And what's interesting is at the beginning of 1939, there was a guy called Carlos Ferrada. Has anyone heard of the name Carlos Ferrada? Carlos Ferrada predicted that a massive blue planet that he called Herculobus. He didn't have a name for it, but he called it Herculobus, and he said that Herculobus would fly by Earth on the 20th of January, 1939. And that it would be a massive event, remembering that Pluto was discovered how many years after Neptune? We're getting good at this. We're starting to become Newtonian experts. We're starting to see through the grand deception. We come to the 20th of January, 1939. Carlos Ferrada makes a prediction. This is when all the long-duration volcanoes are about to go crazy. The whole world is about to go crazy. Something, when we're close to this big blue object, needs us to go to war. It needs us to go into absolute aggression, into hate. It needs us to plunge the vibration. So in 1939, he predicts that thousands of people would die in Chile on the 20th of January 1939. Well, he actually said the 24th of January, but he hadn't accounted for the fact that the big earthquake and seismology that happens around the 20th of January mostly is amplified by the movements of the moon. Which nearly all the flybys that we see, all the big seismology, will either be on the neat moon or on the full or on the aligned moon with the sun, new or full. And so when the New Horizons had released, they had sent their satellite to Pluto, that was going to have to, remember what we're going to do here, we're going to send the satellite up, and we always send our satellites to Venus. We never, none of our satellites, not one of them has done a flyby of Mars. They all go to Venus first. And we're like, wrong way, brother! You're like, oh no, we have to go to Venus because we do kind of slingshots or what they call gravity assist shots, and they need Venus, and they come back and do another one around Earth, and it's always very complicated. You're like, you definitely need to go the wrong way. It's closer to the sun, you could be a little bit hotter. We just go to Mars and just chip. No, we always go to Venus, and we're like, okay, so the wrong way, but yeah, okay, I get it, because that's science, isn't it? That's Newtonian science. Like Newtonian science was all the planets were put there by Newton, by the hand of God. That's how Newton gave us his science. The whole idea was all the planets break the rules of Kepler's orbital mechanics. They're all in this perfect circle, and they arrive at this place, supposedly, Isaac Newton tells us, by the hand of God. So we kind of arrive at this place, and we always bring this thing back. So we're kind of always confused of which direction things are going and where they went. We know that they supposedly went up, they got into orbit, then they went over to Venus, they did a slingshot around Venus, and they came back to Earth, did a kind of a slingshot around Earth, and then shot out. They shot past Mars, but they didn't use Mars as a slingshot. They shot straight through the asteroid belt without any consequence. All of these asteroids just spinning around, they just straight through that without any consequence, and then they come to kind of like, then they come to kind of like Jupiter, and then they're going to go to Saturn, and then they're going to go around Uranus, and then they're going to go around Neptune, and then finally they're going to hopefully find Pluto, and they're going to beam it all back, and that's the story that we're on. Except that here, we can take pictures of Eris, even though we're further from it than we would be if we stayed on Earth. So it's going to go off to find Eris and Pluto and all these kind of like other fabled. Eris is the new Pluto. The new invention of the 84-year period. It's time we got a new one off the ground, guys. Who is it going to be? It's going to be really, really far away now, isn't it? It's just like, yeah, it's going to be a long way. We're going now. We're going to go and look at it. We're going to go shoot through the asteroid belt. That shouldn't be a problem. We're just going to race through, straight through the asteroid belt, no problems, and we're going to fly out. We can take pictures of Eris even though we're further from it than we would be if we'd stayed on Earth. John Spencer, New Horizons team member, said in an interview with The Verge, but we're looking at it from a unique angle you can never see from Earth because Earth is so close to the sun, Spencer added. So he's kind of like we're told, we've taken Pluto off because it's kind of not on the same ecliptic. But imagine if it's not just on the same. What they're really trying to tell you is it's not just on the same. It's not on the same ecliptic. It's not on the same planetary ecliptic.
I thought it was too tiny.
Well, there's all these kind of like unusual kind of things that they keep adding and taking away, and it's all this very awkward thing. But we're kind of left in this situation where. So this was another interesting one because when I turned up into America, I turned up. The ESO had just released the ESO. So we come to the next after the 20th of January, the day of Trump's inauguration, and we see this massive flyby. It comes, like I say, with this massive seismology. It absolutely transforms. Suddenly I'm getting millions of people kind of like getting in contact. The whole thing's going mad. All the big channels. This was pre-fake news. This was when all the channels were unrestricted. You could say what you like, you could get it all out there. Every time you were putting a video, suddenly you just had massive traffic. We experienced a renaissance. All of those who experienced the internet before Trump might remember the renaissance that we experienced and all the information that was massively more available than it is now, with a massive shutdown and massive control over the information we're able to access. So the ESO releases a press release saying that 230 million light years ago, two neutron stars had collided and caused a burst of energy, and that burst of energy had ricocheted across the universe and was confirmation that electromagnetic energy travels at the same speed as gamma ray radiation, as light energy. And it was just like, oh my God, this transforms everything. But what actually happened was, if I can find it, was as I touched down in America, this object had come into view. Just on the day that I was touching down in America, this object comes into view, exactly what I'm said you're going to see. It comes into view as it flies by. It's seen on both sides of the Atlantic. Sorry, I'll just cancel the sound there. It was just an absolute phenomenal to see, and then we kind of like, and then we have the ESO giving us a massive press release. You know, it was just and I'm touching down in America because I'm saying this flyby is going to come in. We're going to do a big conference on the day of the flyby. You know, it's just like such an. And then the European Southern Observatory releases this thing saying, "Oh my God!" And we're just looking at the flyby, thinking, "Oh my God!" We're literally watching them spew their kind of like their astronomical bullshit that they throw over the top of all these mega events. So so when I started experimenting with this model and starting seeing how these things spin around like this in these sort of cycles, and how they come to their kind of like their kind of, you know, they're syncing up basically once every 1800 years. So there I've just gone and stopped it, the 20th of Jan 1939, as in that model, and that's what I was showing you in this model. We got up to 17. We're coming up to. So this is 1846, the discovery of Neptune, and then we're going to go to 1859, and we're going to get a massive. Now we're told that the Carrington event that happened in August 1859. Has anyone ever heard of the Carrington event?
Yeah.
So if you ever heard of it, the Carrington event is a massively recorded event that we're told was caused by a solar flare. So all the solar flares that we've just seen over the last 2 to 3 months, we've just been having massive solar activity. We're told happened on a massive level, where electric pylons back in 1859, there were loads of them, just bang, went over. People in electrical machines, they just got electrocuted. Electrical pumps just became induction welders. You know, the telegram system that would only work with batteries all started firing up and working up. You know, things that were being used just melted, went into meltdown. It happened from pole to pole. It was a massive event. We're told it was a solar flare, but imagine if an object flew by Earth, that we were getting so close to this system, that objects from this system were getting so close to our sun that we're getting close to the objects orbiting our sun, like Earth itself. And that was 1859, and so begins, as we come up now to 1930 and the discovery of the big blue object that's now going to turn up, and then we're going to come to 1939. And what you're looking at here, to understand this, was the shot that I showed you earlier on, where I said this was recorded on the 1st of September 2019, and I showed you an object that appeared to be going in towards the sun, caught on a webcam's De Mexico webcam on the 1st of September 2019. It was a life-changing shot, because it gave me the evidence to build this model, to finally triangulate the position of this object, that all of these objects are orbiting. This object is not what we would call Jupiter. It's what the big blue object orbits. And it's taken us 1800 years to sync up with this object, like we're syncing up. It was arriving in the days of Galileo. You know, this object, this prediction by Carlos Ferrada that put him massively on the map when the big earthquake occurs on the 20th of January 1939, becomes this massive event. Thousands and thousands of people die exactly where he said. Why would he say that? He said in Chile, because Chile, you've got this massive substrate that the Pacific Ocean sits on, which is a basalt floor. And then you've got all these granite mountain range, a completely different substrate. You're going to talk about a massive volume of ocean building up on the floor of the Pacific, because of the presence of this object coming in the southern aspect of our solar system. It's going to pull all the oceans up, just like it did in 2011, when it pulled all the oceans up and it caused the tsunami on the 11th of March 2011, where it pulls the oceans up and puts enormous pressure on the Pacific basin. Where else can it go apart from on the most volatile fault lines? It's predictable. He could so obviously see that where the earthquakes were going to occur. It would be easy for him to predict. Now it's different because now it comes in. Now, how many years since 1939? Since we were right on the same ecliptic where these two objects are right next to each other right now, which means that objects coming in from Herculobis and those objects orbiting Herculobis are all on the exact same ecliptic. And so objects don't come in from above and cut through the ecliptic plane and go to below. For the first time when they're on the ecliptic like they were in 1939, the system was being visible in 1930. 1939, everything was on the same ecliptic plane. It's like a dolphin diving out of the water, going over the top and then diving back through again. These 2 points of crossing in this massive transit, 1939, cutting through and then going right over the top and then coming back down again. How many years since 1939 apart?
84.
84. If I had another coin, I promise you, you'd have it. 84 years. Now we understand what the 84-year period is. 84 represents the amount of time it takes for our sun to dive through the ecliptic plane of the system our sun orbits, from ecliptic plane, not to do a complete rotation around what it does, but that point between two crossings where everything comes in on the same ecliptic, where an object coming in, like here we've got Jupiter coming in from this system, it's going to come round and it's heading Am I going to work? I think it is working. I call it the Ark of Heaven, because what's going to happen is I'm going to play it. This is Carlos Rada experiencing and saying this is going to happen, this big flyby is going to happen, and he makes his prediction. Everyone says you're mad, and then sure enough the earthquakes happen, and then we're going to go. He explains his whole model different to mine because he was very much of the same ilk as Zachary Sitchin and the 3,600-year orbit, where our sun is the centre and everything revolves around our centre, and we're really important. And so you notice that we've gone now to, we're coming around. There's Earth, there's Mars. We've got Mercury and Venus, and now we've got the objects moving around. Notice that this line here is going forward of this object that I'm calling Herculobis. This is going charging forwards. Notice that our sun is charging forwards, because if our sun was going round something else and its angle of intention changed as it went round, then our entire star vista, our zodiac, our astrological zodiac would change, wouldn't it? If we were constantly going around the sun, or our sun was going around something, and we were charging around like that, changing our angle of intention. But what's actually happening is our sun is constantly charging forward. It is in an orbital relationship with other objects, but actually it is very similar to the kind of model that Nassim Haramein, because Nassim Haramein gave us this idea that the sun was moving up, not moving out on an ecliptic, a flat ecliptic. It was moving up, and all the planets were spiralling around behind him, or potentially moving down, and all the planets were spiralling down. That's very different to moving out, and all the planets coming around it in that fashion on a plane. And for a long time I had to adopt Nassim Haramein's model, and then finally, when I started realising the binary nature of the system that we were in, and I started building this astronomical model, I can understand the crossing here that we just saw in 1939. That first crossing there. What's going to happen as we see Jupiter's coming around now, and as Jupiter comes, so there's Jupiter. Jupiter's just gone past. We can see the Earth has moved further forward from that. The crossing point is changed now. What's happened is every time this has come forward, come round, it's come in 1 year. It's gone 1 calendar month further forward, just as we would expect it. Except that in our heads, Jupiter's got a 12-year orbit. But imagine if we would have to go 1 year forward to 2021 or 2000. What's this? It's 1939, and we come to 1940 or 1941, and we come further forward, and we experience the same thing like 1 month further forward the next year. We're like, oh, it's only moved. We could think it because it's moving with us. So we're kind of like we're seeing something that looks static, but it's actually moving with us. So it looks static in the sky. We see it, and 1 year later we see it 1 calendar month further forward. So we say, oh, that's got a 12-year orbit, and that's why we see it. It's only moved 1/12. We don't realise it's actually gone round with us, but it's gone 1 calendar month further forward. And so we see this pattern, and that's what we keep this reoccurring thing. What the hell is that big blue object that we keep seeing? And so we come to, if I just keep this going, we've got a lot of other objects, and we're just touching on the Jupiter object at the moment. We're gonna understand that Charon and Kerberos, that I named Charon and Kerberos, these are the twin tail objects that we keep saying, these epic shots of the twin tail objects. And I'm going to show you, like the first object I showed you, this was one of the twin tail objects. These, Charon, I call them Charon and Kerberos, named after the moons of Pluto. You know, because I like to kind of play with all these names to kind of get us to understand that we're dealing with the same thing. So I try to give them all, mix them all into the match. But what's going to happen is we're going to get to 1943, 44, and you'll notice now that when Jupiter comes round, bam, now Jupiter is crossing at the July-August period. And that's where it's syncing up now. It's no longer, so we can see that from 1939 it was sinking down here. When we go to 1944, 45, it's sinking over here. So when we come to 2017, if we look at my last model and we come to, that's quite an interesting shot. I mean, we just get so many of these incredible, these incredible shots of Jupiter. I've just seen so many. No one can ever believe them because we haven't got a model, we haven't got a way of seeing them because we are living in a 500-year. So this is an old model that I keep looking down at this. This was actually I was just showing that this shot here was caught by a guy called Jeff P. It was a webcam shot. It was caught on the 14th of October, 2016. We all downloaded it. No one could believe it when it came in. It was looking at the northeast sky at 10 o'clock at night, and it was mesmerizing. And what happened was, this happens first of all, this massive plasma shot appears in the sky, and what is this big stripy planet that just suddenly appears? And then when it goes off, this other huge great sun appears, but it didn't make the sky go blue. It was just this massive sun appeared on a black background, and then the whole thing just went out, like it was all cancelled, like something was seriously hiding this thing. It just flashed into view. Now this, as I'm understanding it, is plasma charging into the side of Mars. The very thing that that Wal Thornhill would talk about in the kind of like in the Thunderbolt kind of like Thunderbolt project, and the kind of like the electric universe theories, all talking about a plasma charge. And yet when a big plasma bolt occurs, we get it on webcam, no one says a thing. Everyone's just like, it was the most sensational shot all over the internet. Everyone's just like, it can't be. Oh my God. No one could talk about it. It was beyond belief. It was utterly beyond belief. Everyone was just like, we couldn't understand. This thing was arriving at the ecliptic. All of these objects are arriving just as we can understand them to the ecliptic. We're seeing the kind of like, so we kind of saw that, and then that was 2016. So this kind of model was my kind of like the first time I was attempting to kind of make sense of all of these different. So I said we were going to go through to, what date did I say? 2017. So we're just going to come through to on this model 2017, because there's probably more overlays on this model. It's a bit more, but it wasn't just this shot here that came in. What was interesting was this shot here. This shot was put up by Dill Martin, and when he came in, he took his channel down afterwards. He was very Christian channel. Many Planet Xers are very Christian. They, do you know what I mean? One of the things that happens when you start making videos about this sort of stuff is you start getting the most sensational data that it destabilizes you so much that you literally turn to God, or you'll turn to something because it overwhelms you, because you realize that most people can't look at it. It's too overwhelming. It interferes with too much of the astronomical model that you've kind of like that you've lived in. It just turns everything upside down. And so when this video came in, he kind of shut his channel. He didn't make another channel for a long time, but he didn't make any. He just stopped making videos. He just realised that people just weren't going to ever look at this. And of course, what we were all seeing at this point, Trump's inauguration, we were seeing what I'm now understanding to be the Ark of Heaven, this big blue object that we call Pluto, that we always name after the underworld, is actually.
So, did you actually see this?
This was a massive shot. This was a sensational shot that came out. Like I say, when it came out, because
yeah, but did you see it?
No, this was from Mexico. This was seen from Mexico, from the Mexican skyline. But we've had
so much fake stuff.
Oh no, totally true, and you know, all I can do is kind of like. But one of the things, I've been doing this for a long time and worked with a bunch of sky watchers that I've kind of worked with over the years, got to know really well. And there's some people out there that are really genuine sky watchers. Some people are absolutely mad Christians, but there's not that. In my experience, there's a lot of. Anyway, let me just come forward to that. But this was an interesting shot. See these shots here. This pair here. Have I just lost that? Oh, how annoying! He just jumped. Yeah, these shots here, when they. Oh dear me, I'm so sorry. Maybe the file's a bit too big. I think we have to go back to this model. It might be easier. So we've come to. I was exploring actually coming up to 1939 to 1945 and showing how we come from this point and then we cross to this point. If I now come forward to, we see all this. The reason I built this model so everyone can go onto it and see some of the planets that have been passing us and going by us. You know, it's got all of your date of births in here basically. But if we come forward to 2004, you remember we're going to go to 1986. We're going to see when Chernobyl went bang. We're going to see all the alignments in Chernobyl. We're going to come forward to 2004, where we get the repeat of what happened in 1939, and that is the big tsunami that happened on the 26th of December 2004. And then we're going to go to a quarter turn, and we're going to come to 2008, and we're going to come to the midway point where we actually cross the ecliptic, where we see the big Sichuan earthquake in 2008, which I personally think was the precursor for the financial crash. As in, you know, we can throw whatever story we like at the financial crash, but when you can absolutely see that a massive amount of buildings and property are going to suffer substantial damage, if you're in the know and you really know this model exists and you really understand the movement of things, you're going to think, I'm going to pull my money out of the property market whilst we go past a big flyby. It's an unstable time to have my money in property. So you might think, pull your money out. And so a lot of people pulled their money out. We saw this massive earthquake. It's listed as a 5.5, not even a 6. And so many skyscrapers fell over. Massively underreported about a massive event that happens in 2008. And of course then we come forward to kind of like, and then we're going to start coming, we come to the February earthquake of 2010. Chile, the 8.8 that earthquake occurs on the 27th of February, with the 26th of February being the day when the massive seismic event happened in Iceland, a single eruption that shut down all our air travel. And then we're going to, like I say, come forward. Notice where I'm calling them Kerberos and Chiron here. We're going to come forward to 2011, and we're going to now see how this same flyby is causing these are the twin tail objects. And we start seeing these twin tail objects. They're all small. We see one, and then we're kind of like we're coming 12. We come 200 days later, and we're going to see a pair. They're very small in this one, but people see a pair of objects. We're going to go 200 days later, and we're going to see this object, and we're going to see this big blue object coming in on the 14th of October 2013. People just marveling at, what is that thing? Is it a spaceship? Is it a whatever? We're going to go 200 days later. And we're going to see this thing, and we're going to say, oh, what the hell is that thing? It just looks like it's a bird. Oh, it's a plane. It's a rocket. Oh, it's a one of those things out of Harry Potter. It can't be a planet, because if it was a planet, it wouldn't make any sense. Because we live in a 500-year astronomical model, so that can't be there, can it? It was stupid. You know what I mean? And then we're going to go 200 days later, and we're going to say, oh, what's that thing? It's just like, it's just like, wow. And then we're going to go 200 days later, and we're going to say, what is that weird thing? It looks a bit like a hot air balloon, maybe? I don't know what it is, And then we're going to go forward, and we're going to say, what is that thing? It looks a bit like green. It looks like one of those kind of punks that you see down in kind of like, I don't know. What is that? It can't be a, no. So we just have to kind of go on and just think, no, that can't be right. And then we're gonna go 200 days later, and we're gonna start saying, well, what is that big red thing that looks like it's I don't know what it is. So we're just gonna move on and pretend that. And then I make the video and I say, guys, we come to exactly 100 days after the last flyby. I don't know if we're going to see anything, but wouldn't it be interesting if we all looked out and had a look on the 28th of February? Oh, sorry, on the 28th of March 2016. Please keep an eye out. Please have your cameras ready. See if anything comes into view. We get this woman who just sees this most incredible flyby. She sees both of them. She's like, what is this? Two of them at the same time. It doesn't make any sense. What is that? And she's just filming it. Well, I'd seen the two before at the same time at the February-March period. That's when, do you remember over Russia, the asteroids that came through, or the asteroid that came through, and it was on the 15th of February, 2013. And the day before, we just had this incredible sighting of this object that fitted in exactly with my 200-day anomaly, and I was just like, no, it's just too much. And then we get this guy, an English filmmaker who's been to hell and back when he made this video. And when he made this video and he saw it, he was Matt Rogers, 15th of August 2016, again 10 p.m. at night. He was in Hull. He sees this incredible, he just sees this bright glow, and then it comes clean over the horizon. And as it goes down, you see all the debris in its tail. When he made the video, it's just like, it's time to believe now, guys. What is this? He'd been filming more kind of chemtrail and kind of like weather modification and all this sort of stuff, and that was his whole thing. And then of course we get this shot on the 14th of October 2016. By this time I was just I was doing massive shows with massive channels in America and Canada, and in England you could not speak to anyone. Anyone you spoke to you were insane. Anyway. It was just, you were too much, and you were just watching the seismology. You were watching the volcanoes go off. You know, the environmentalists, I remember seeing the great global warming swindle where they were saying, guys, carbon dioxide might be our friend. We might be going after the wrong man. We could be going after abundant clean energy. We're all going down the carbon zero. We want to be carbon zero, and we're all carbon based. And we're building nuclear power stations when massive amount of carbon is getting erupted out. We're just building nuclear power stations on them. And we love building nuclear power stations on tsunami hotspots in the name of wanting to be carbon zero. It's going like, what is going on? Have we gone mad? But the seismology got bigger, and suddenly the sightings started getting bigger. Everything just didn't make sense. Everything, all the 2012ers, it said that we were in this kind of 3,600 year model where it comes in, it goes out the other side, and it's all over and done in a flash. We didn't have a window for a 400 year model. We didn't have the apparatus to build a 400 year model, or to understand it, or to build it, or to see it. We didn't have the notions. This was a shot I showed you in the previous model, put up at Dill Martin, around about the 12th, 13th of January. He was devastated when everyone just thought he was mad. He got utterly attacked, and he realised he just had to let people find this. This was when this is the Ark of Heaven. This is when we come right next to our fabled fifth dimension. This is where we build, this object is where we build our castles in the sky. This is this thing that we've called our low vibrational thing, this Pluto, the world of the underworld and everything else like that. Pluto's never been a long way away from us. Pluto is flying by us right now. We are in stone's throwing distance of Pluto or Jupiter or Herculobus, or what really the Mayans would call the Blue Kachina. Jupiter is and always has been the fabled blue Kachina, and it orbits a big red dwarf planet, which is the fabled red Kachina. And they've thrown a massive story over the top of us to hide this massive thing that arrived 400 years ago. And the reason they've thrown this massive story over the top to hide this convoluted story is because it takes, if once you see this system and you can understand which way the sun is going, you can cosmically align. Now I'm going to show you the most amazing thing. I'm going to show you the most amazing thing that's going to blow you away. I think. If it doesn't blow you away, I'm going to be very surprised. If I can find it. Might have to click through a few of these. Oh my goodness. Well, before we go any further, this, last year, I'm expecting to see it. I'm saying, look out for it. And then during the big golf tournament in America, on the fairway, taking the shot, the whatever you call it, the commentator, he has to say, look at that unusual cloud, and he has to call the big blue spherical object. Do you remember when what's his name? Elon Musk sent the car to space, and he sends a car in space, and no one even believes he sent the car to space. That's the biggest joke. Everyone's just like, it's a scam, it's a con, it's a da. And he sends it into space, and everyone's just looking at the video. So everyone's seeing through. All the kids have seen through all the bullshit with the standard model. None of it works. Some of them are going down flat Earth. Some of them are going. They know it's a sinking ship. They know it doesn't make any sense. Oh, people who like to believe that Pluto's coming into their field, and oh yes, it's all going to be great, and that sort of stuff. It's just like they are just realizing it's all a load of bullshit. And they're just like, where are you guys? You know what I mean? Where are you guys? What story are you in? They're watching this. They're seeing the whole thing coming up. They're realizing that we're either all mad, as in adolescents, adults, a lot less sense. As we are grappling with our Pluto ideas and throwing our old things, the big blue Pluto is just right next to us, causing the biggest earthquakes, the biggest volcanoes, the biggest tsunamis, the biggest earth changes. It's making all our armies rally up and ready for the biggest war to plummet the vibration, because you might wake up. You might become cosmic. Because you might suddenly realize where you're going in the scheme of things. you might align with the cosmos in the scheme of things. And that could be a terrifying thing, because what happens if you align with the cosmos? You align with all the galactic intelligence within the cosmos. That could be a scary thing. And so I'm going to show you something that's going to blow you away. I'm looking for the fabled... there it is. Well, the fabled planet X was Pluto all along. This was when I was saying I had to give you some bad news, guys, but it looks like you're not just going to be giving up smoking this year. You're also going to be giving up Pluto. Oh no! I can't give up Pluto. And then you're going to have to think about giving up Uranus. You're like, no! You know what I mean? And then you might have to think about giving up Neptune. It's just, Golden Bennett, it's all too much. They've been my crutches for the last kind of 40 years. And then suddenly you're like... So I built this astronomical model. The first time I built the astronomical model, I've been playing with the ideas, the maths, everything, working unbelievably hard, trying to work out a way, to find a way where I could build this astronomical model using software and show 1800 years of movement in a single model, and then macro it down to the last to the last 150 years and zoom right into our sun and the interaction with this big blue object, kind of working out where I could picture it from, how I could build it, rattles around, tortured by this the astronomical kind of mechanics of building this system. It burns in my head to get to one point. You pick up an ephemeris and you go through it and you kind of find out where the planets were when you were born. Now imagine trying to step out of that, thinking whether you're in the north or the southern aspect of the solar system, and then you're looking whichever way you're looking, and you're trying to bring all the other interactions into place, and then you try and picture yourself standing on the side of the planet as you're trying to bring that into place, so you're visualizing that in 3D. Every time you build a model, that's what you do. And if you can get to that one place, that one frame, like you would do in ephemeris, where you look at all the positions, and you finally have it down there, and you're like, okay, got it, and you hold it for a millisecond, and then it's gone. And you've written it all down, and everything else of that, you've got it all down, you've worked out all the mathematics, and you go back to it, and you're like, You just need days to get there, and there's just a sea of numbers on a bit of paper, and you're just like, I know I got this so So then you finally realise you've got to build an astronomical model to do that. It burns your brain. You just go, when you want to see where the planets are now, you go onto solarsystemscope.com. You just go on solar systems, where were the planets at this time? You go on, you put the planets in, you press the button, there they are. You're just making a cup of tea. You put the hot water in, you look where the planets were. Now you're thinking about, should I squeeze the tea back a little bit more? And then you're moving on, and you're just like, the planets are there, and then you go along and you la. That process would have taken eons before. What you're doing in a moment, what you're doing in seconds, suddenly we have this apparatus where we can ask the questions we could never ask. The bullshit systems, the stories that we've been told, and this kind of yesteryear of bullshit and astronomical kind of ignorance is finished. It's finished. We either wake up or we're just being slapped around the face by a different type of truth that is telling us that we live in a very different system. So, what happens? I make this model. It's 2020. My dear mum's still alive. She's going to die in July 27, 2020. But I finished this model in maybe this new astronomical model in about February, March. I've been working for years on it, trying to work out a way to build it and just to show it, just to get a window on it. And I finally get it going. And when I get it going, this very odd thing happens. I didn't want to show you that bit. I want to show you that after. But as it's come out just like that, I think we're just going to have to stop it right there, and then I'm going to show the other bits after, because there it is in all its glory. So, 2020, a cave is dug out in Mexico. It's on the Pacific coast, on the Pacific side. So it's not what do you call the area? I can't even. I've been there.
Baja California.
Huh?
Baja California.
But way below. It was actually in Mexico. It was on the Pacific coast, and it was indigenous land, and it was a disputed railway that they were digging. They were digging a tunnel, and they discover a cave in this railway, and in the cave, there's these carvings. They've got all the Mayan calendars and all those sort of things that you've got used to. You know, all those symbols. But then there's this grey alien with these black eyes, which I'm going to open up in a shake. And he's got the most incredible kind of like, he's got this grey alien that's got this symbol on the side of his head. And in his arms, he's cradling a baby Inca god. And then you've got this full-size grown Inca god cradling this baby grey alien. One the reverse of the other. And on the big grey alien that's cradling the baby Inca god, he has this symbol on the side of his head. And I said to my girlfriend at the time, Rach, I said, look at that. I said, that's just incredible. And she said, oh, it reminds me of a crop circle that we went in 2009 up at Silby Ring. I said, really? I said, it was similar to that. And she said, yeah. And I went 2009 crop circles, and I put them next to each other. I nearly fell off my seat. I was like, that's not the same. That's identical. But the mad thing is that when I'd seen it, that crop circle for the first time, when I'd seen this image for the first time, I realised that is that right? Did we get it? Let me just come forward. Yeah, so I just need to come to this point here. And there. And if I zoom that in, you're going to see our sun. Even though we haven't zoomed up here, but you can imagine if I was to be zoomed closer to this object, we'd see these our sun and what I'm calling Pluto in this model. Whether you want to call it Pluto, whether you want to call it Uranus, whether you want to call it Jupiter, whether you want to call it kind of like Pluto, whatever you want to call the big blue object that we reinvent every 84 years to keep us in our nice little heliocentric model.
If it's 84 years, it must be yours.
I don't think so. I did think so. And 84 years is the period it takes, actually, for our sun. Imagine this is the ecliptic of the planet X system, not of our sun. And our sun is coming off on that ecliptic. It's our sun that is on a different ecliptic to the big system. So there's a point where we come up through the planet X system and we cross, and then at a point where we come back down and we recross and plunge back through to go right around the system again and start over. That point from plunging through the ecliptic on one side and then plunging through the ecliptic on the other, like a dolphin diving out of the water, that takes 84 years.
Come back to its original place.
To recross the ecliptic, like a dolphin coming out of the water and then going back in the water. That point of crossing the ecliptic and then recrossing. Not doing a full rotation. A full rotation is somewhere.
It's going to be 168.
No, it's going to be it's either 5 cycles or 6 cycles. It's trying to, even now, I'm a little unsure because I've built the model in various different ways. Sometimes I show our sun having 5 cycles around whatever we're calling planet X, and this big red planet with this big blue planet that orbits around it doing 6 times in 1800 years. And sometimes it's vice versa, and it's very, very difficult to ascertain overall, truly, which is the forward motion of our sun in that story. For all the research that I have done, in all this time, I imagine that this direction here of the forward motion of this object, and thus the forward motion of all of the objects, all actually having this forward motion with them. They're charged with that. They're basically, there's some objects that are orbiting. Their angle of intention changes as they go round. So they're stuck in a kind of a tight orbit to another object. And there's some objects that have got so much density that they have a direct orbital relationship with something like the galactic, or our not our solar system, our local Milky Way, our local galaxy. Is that a galaxy or our local big Milky Way? And then you've got other objects that get locked into direct orbital relationships with those objects, but some objects are so big that they're just constantly retaining a forward motion around those objects. And when they are, like our sun, getting close to this whatever you want to call this big blue object, it's also it's got so much density that it's also fully locked into a forward motion around the centre of the Milky Way also. So we have these kind of different types of orbital relationships, depending on the density and the mass and the speed. And what we're literally seeing is the reason why all these numbers seem to map out, is why we see this 200-day anomaly. But just remembering that point there, that's what, if I come back to, before I show you, if I come back to that, we're seeing, just come back to the crop circle. We're seeing those two objects, our sun and whether you want to call it Pluto, whether you want to call it Neptune, whether you want to call it Uranus, orbiting a big, whatever we're all orbiting here. But notice what this is giving us on top of the idea of this. It's giving us motion. Motion. It's giving us a sense of motion, the very thing that we've taken out. When we apply motion to the dynamic of where we're going in terms of the sun and its forward motion, it's like a plug-in. It's like a cosmic plug-in. It's giving us the ability to cosmically align with the movement of our sun and bring that into the fold. Now you can imagine if the Earth's axis, or if the sun's axis is like that, to the ecliptic being on say the ecliptic of the big system our sun orbits is like that, and our sun is coming in on a different angle of ecliptic. Our planets, as in the Earth and Mars and Venus and the last one that
Uranus?
No. The four inner ones: Mercury, Venus, Earth and Mars. Imagine all those planets orbiting the sun. They've all got this weird angle where they sit at this angle. Now imagine that they're actually sitting true, like our Earth is actually sitting its axis is actually perpendicular to the big system we're really in, as in the bigger system.
So it's like a gyroscope.
So it's like a gyroscope. And we sit at this unusual angle because our Earth is set to the true ecliptic of the big system we're in. But our sun is kind of an ecliptic. So we're kind of like, we think our ecliptic is like that, but Earth is actually sitting true to the perpendicular to the big planetary system, which is why we have this odd angle. And that's why when we come to the 21st of June, not only is it the longest day of the year, but it's also the very front edge of our sun. I found it by charting what I call the corridors. What I've discovered through my research is that where all the Planet X's of old that were telling us about 2012, but they didn't have any data because it was all about to start. They were right. It was right on the money. It came right on the schedule. We had nuclear power stations going into meltdown. We had the biggest events, but we didn't have a window on it because we were living in an astronomical line. And suddenly we see that we've had these massive events occurring, this incredible seismology, all of these kind of long duration volcanoes. We just saw 61 volcanoes simultaneously going off, flooding the heating that has been going off in the Pacific, where I talk about the fault line that runs from the Kamchatka Peninsula at the very north of the Pacific Basin down to Hawaii. Remember, these are the two of the biggest volcanoes on the planet. What's on the Kamchatka Peninsula? I don't know if it's Shevaluch or whichever one it is, that there's the second biggest volcano in the world on that peninsula. And obviously the biggest volcano in the world. You can get Everest into it 230 times. Is the Big Island. The whole Big Island. with you know, when we're talking about Kilauea and what's the other big volcano that's all part of the same volcano, it will come to me in a moment, apologies, but anyway, they're all part of the same volcano. It's just one big volcano, and at just different points, it just the lava, depending on how far the lava lifts up in the volcano, depends on where it's going to come out, basically. But that ocean has been boiling and getting hot above that fault line. Now it's all moving to the northern hemisphere. Now it's to the northern hemisphere. Now it's Iceland going off. Now it's the mid-Atlantic ridge that is now heating up. Now the volcanoes are all coming to the northern hemisphere, and we do not live on a craton. As in, we look down the road. I've got my boat right outside where the Roman baths in Bath, which is volcanic. Hot water coming up from the springs. You look at the other direction, you look at Bristol and you look at the gorge, the Clifton Suspension Bridge and the gorge it goes over. You're seeing plates ripped to bits all on top of each other, all sorts of crazy angles. You go up to the North Wales and you see volcanoes everywhere. You go down to the southeast and you see where the chalk has come up from under the ocean and come up. You look at Hadrian's Wall and you see a fault line that has split the whole country up the middle. We are not a craton, as in when you're talking about big tectonic plates, like the Eurasian plate and the African plate and the kind of like the Indian plate or the Indo-Pacific plate, you're talking about parts of that plate being made of very strong granite without a single fault line going through the plate. Nothing's breaking there. It might move around and bobble around, but every time it bobbles around, granite floats on magma. It just goes higher. Every time there's an earthquake, it just gets a little bit higher and floats a little bit higher. You're not going down, you're going up. On the 22nd of November 2016, I'd made the video saying, guys, we're going to see seismology on this date. Don't ask me why, I don't truly understand, but the pattern is utterly solid. And then the earthquake occurs on the 22nd of November. Well, I said the 24th, and the earthquake occurs on the 22nd. And we see the whole plate in New Zealand rise up. People standing on the beach, the plate rises up 2 meters in front of them. The whole plate, the whole landmass rises up 2 meters standing on the beach. If it was the other way round and the sea had dropped, there would have been a massive tsunami, but the ground was so buoyant when it shook because it was made of granite. It didn't sink, it just suddenly went and just rose up. Dunk. Oh, we've got a better view, darling. It was just, you know, there's events going on at the moment that are so like clockwork. They're so like clockwork. And since I've learned to add movement into this equation, which is what this was giving us. It was giving us a way to cosmically align with the system that we're really living in and start seeing our whole solar system in a very, very different way. And
looks like a hummingbird. I wonder if
I think
the hummingbird is another key of its behaviour or its flight patterns or something, you know.
Yeah, it really does. It really, really, really does. And that hummingbird also kind of, like I say, does give you this sense of motion in there, a forward moving something in this whole. Notice how they're all kind of linked up to this alignment. They're all kind of like, and that's what through this, when we're realizing that our sun is locked in a forward motion and we are locked into a journey around within the cosmos, and we connect to that story and we start aligning with that with our minds.
Hummingbird always to the crossings. Kashima is a crossing.
A crossing.
That's what a Kashina is. And then the wings and the beak and the tail make that crossing.
Interesting. Yeah.
Also, they always stay at the same angle. Hummingbird hovers. There's a lot of movement, but its beak is always at exactly the same angle, and it moves its body. It doesn't move its head.
That's so interesting, isn't it? Because that's precisely what I'm saying, is how it's holding true, how all of our planets are holding true in this, how we've got this forward motion, this forward dynamic with all of these objects, and when we start connecting to this, we are beginning to cosmically align. So, you've there was one other image that I wanted to kind of show you, which was, if I've still got it here, oh, there's so many shots. There's just, that was a massive shot that came in. I mean, it just looks like a, it was when I said it was going to be absolutely massive and it came into view, the guy who filmed it was just mesmerised. And that was just very recent in the last few days, shot of it from a distance. This shot when it came in last year.
I'm so sceptical, but were these filmed by lots of different people, or just by one guy?
Oh no, lots and lots of different people. When this one came in, this was on the Guardian. This was on the
same phenomenon was filmed by a lot of different people.
Yeah, many of them were. This was a phenomenon because I'd made the video before. Obviously, you know, you could look at it and say, "Oh, that's a lenticular cloud." Now, if you go onto the Guardian, you're just going to see loads of people say, "Oh, it's an earthquake cloud," because I have repeatedly shown you this same object coming in and predicting when you're going to see it, predicting the seismology, where you're going to see it, whether it's going to be in the northern aspect of the globe or the southern aspect of the globe, because these things are moving like clockwork, like absolute clockwork. I've been turning up into America, to talks in America on the day of flybys, you know, and seeing the ESO scramble to kind of do, the European Southern Observatory scramble to throw bullshit stories at me. I built model. When I built my first model, and I released it on the day I released the video. I loaded the video. I met this lovely guy Bart, and I made the video with him. He said, "Come up to Swex in the mountain. We're going to work. We're going to build a video. You're going to talk. You're going to talk. I'm going to film. We're going to work, and we're going to produce something." We produce this video. We go to edit the video. As we go to edit the video, the guy upstairs. Or downstairs. No, the guy downstairs went absolutely crazy, tried to set fire to the building with paraffin, and he couldn't light it because he'd thrown it all around the building, or it was maybe heating oil, and he couldn't light it. Anyway, he gets taken away by the police because when he couldn't set fire to the building, he got taken away by the police, and then I'm just like, whoa, that's a bit mad. Then we finished the video. I pressed kind of like load on the video to load it up onto YouTube, and it's going to take kind of the best part of 12 hours or whatever to load up on YouTube. I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to go and sleep in my truck, which is parked outside. My truck that I haven't used for over maybe 3-4 days. A diesel truck, not a petrol truck. Everything's off in the truck. I go to bed in his spare room. He's like crashing in the spare room. 3 days, 3 nights, non-stop work. We produced the video. I finally go to bed. He wakes me up at 3 in the morning, and he's like, Dave, your truck's blown up. And I was like, what do you mean my truck's blown up? And he was like, your truck's outside. It's not only blown up, but fully ablaze. It started up, and fully ablaze. It started up, and it went down the. And it drove down the hill on its own, and hit this tree. And it's been a mad day. So directly, the mad thing is that when it happened, I just literally posted that last video about the 10-day warning, and then I was woken up by my mate who's got the camera here, Bart. I woken up by Bart saying, Dave, your van's burning down. So I don't know, maybe I'm drawing this in myself, maybe it's part of my own karma, seeing this, I don't know what it is. But whatever it is, it woke me up with this feeling of the immediate thing I had yesterday morning when I worked with it was, Yeah, well, this morning, I suppose, really early this morning, was I was beginning. Shock. It was almost excitement. And coming out and seeing it burning is my home. Run it for 9 years. Keep the old ones on the road. That's what I always do. You know what I mean? I'm not into this kind of economy of just scrap it when it goes. 9 years. 9 years in service. We've had so many adventures. I've had so many adventures in this truck. And I think there's a lot of people out there that have been in this truck along the way and had so many adventures. And I can tell you what, she went out with a blaze of glory up in the Pyrenees. So I guess I'm in the right place, because this, it seems to me right now, for me, where the journey kind of stops. I'm obviously where I'm meant to be, because my wheels are no more. That is it. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. That is. I could keep on going for a lot more, but hopefully you're getting a window on the big blue object, the Jupiter, that arrived in the Galileo's time, and they've tried to cover up in every which way, and has only become revealed to us in this very short window. What I call the I just wanted to before I answer any questions, and I come to you first of all with your question. Dave said a very interesting thing to me. He said, I've been reading very interesting. He said, I've been reading the Aquarian Gospel of Christ. I don't know, is anyone familiar with that text? And he said, I've been reading it. And what happened was I went to see my dad, and I said, Dad, I built a new astronomical model. And he was like, oh, God, here we go. And he said, I better sit down, son, I better sit down. And so he sat down, and I said, look, I'm calling this bit the Ark of Heaven, as in when we come right next to this fifth dimensional doorway that gives us the opportunity, those that are ready, to jump up to a communal realm, as in the fifth dimension, a higher realm that is not just your own personal earth astral realm. A very selfish realm for those that, not a selfish realm, but so many people are ready to jump up into a communal astral realm. They're not quite ready to share and to bring all their stuff. But imagine that you've all been building with your highest, most beautiful vibrational activities on this earth. You have been building with all your different lives. You've been building a palace in the skies. On a higher place where all of your best, all of our best fuses and comes together to create a higher realm. That to me is my understanding of what this big blue object is. And when it comes very close to us, it's not an end of the universe or end of the world kind of scenario. It's a door that opens to us, that gives us the opportunity to jump out and to go to a higher space and work from a higher space, to change our soul address. And so when I said to him, look, I said, I'm calling it the Ark of Heaven because it seems to be, this is the time in 1939 to 1944, 45. My mum was born in 1944. She was just like, she came in, and ironically, she goes out exactly on the flyby of one of these objects. I was born when one of these objects come in, and that's why I build these astronomical models, so you can have a look and see what parts of the Jupiter system were flying by when you were born, because this has been next to us since the 1920s, 1930s. So you can all see where all of these planets were, where you jump on and jump off. And I showed my dad, and my dad said, oh my God, he said, you know, when I came back, he used to travel around the Middle East years ago before he had kids, and he shed his blood at these kind of war-torn areas for money when he was in the Middle East and that sort of stuff, one of his stories. And he got sick with liver disease from someone's blood, and caused him to have hepatitis, and he met this guy that was giving him healing, and he felt a bit uncomfortable with the guy touching him. He said, look, I won't touch you, but he said, you'll feel it every day. And on the seventh day, he said he didn't feel it anymore. He didn't feel the healing, didn't feel anything. And he rang him up, and he said, well, you didn't give it to me today, did you? He said, I'm so pleased. He said, I'm so pleased you felt that. He said, I wanted to know whether you'd feel it or not. He said, no, couldn't do it today. And he said, but I've got a message for you. And he said, you're going to do spiritual work. And he said, what is the spiritual work? And he said, I can't tell. He said, but I can tell you. He said, when your spiritual work begins, you will see blue. Yeah. And so he said, okay. And then he just ended up, someone's gave him a copy of the Aquarian Gospel of Christ. And the Aquarian Gospel of Christ was written in 1844 when we came up with the Doppler effect. And guess what we were right next to? The big blue planet, when this book was written. And it is supposedly this guy writing the story, his name is John Levy, and he writes the story, he channels the story of the story of Christ according to the Hall of Records. And in it he talks about when you stand forth at the Ark of Heaven. And my dad said when he read that, blue cascaded over the top of the book, and he took into his thing and he said, I'm going to remember that. And he kept the book, and because every time he read it, he felt he could see this blue. And so when I said, oh God, it reminds me of the Ark of Heaven, my dad said, I've heard of that term before. And he went running off and looked at the and I found it, it's in here, the Ark of Heaven. And as soon as he said it, I went straight onto the internet and just put Ark of Heaven PDF, came up with the PDF, just put Ark of Heaven. I was just reading it to him. I was like, did it say? He was like, yeah, that was it. Oh my God. And I was like, I'm very curious about that. So I read the story of the Ark of Heaven. And when I read the story of Jesus and the Ark of Heaven, when I'd gone to America in 2017, I'd gone because a bunch of Christians had flown me out, and no criticism to any Christians or anything, because we all see our own way and we all go on our journey. And as you can well believe, as in the believers will be leaving shortly, I'm afraid. The notion of touching that was an incredible thing. Anyway, when I turned up in 2017. There was an eclipse party happening, and I wanted to go to this big wild eclipse party. It was just like, hang on, before I started getting down to go to the churchy things, I might just kind of like sort a couple of other things. There was an eclipse happening exactly at the same time on the 17th of August. So I just thought, there's a mad eclipse party. I might as well swing by Oregon and go for a crazy party, because the party was in Bend, Oregon, which is where Osho had his big ashram. And I'm a massive fan of Osho. I'm a massive fan of Osho, and I just needed to make sure that the gods knew that I wasn't there to go in there to meet the kind of like the Christian Catholic Christ and go on a kind of mad mission. I needed them to know that if there was any place I was going to pay homage, it wasn't going to be to any Christian place. It was going to be to Osho. And there it was. There was the eclipse was happening in Bend, where he'd set up his whole kind of like ashram. So it was a very cosmic journey, and when I read the Aquarian Gospel of Christ, oh my God, it was like reading the story of Osho. It was such a refreshing story. It was just like, it was everything you could imagine it would be in terms of his journey. It was so logical. It made so much sense. There was just so much of it, and the way he just actually denounced any type of blood sacrifice, and the way he'd had to turn up in Jerusalem, and with Pontius Pilate meeting him when he's getting there, and Pontius Pilate saying, "You cannot go in there. You go in there, you're dead meat." He said, "Listen, I know, I've seen you speak in Greece. You speak well. You get away with murder. You can say anything. You go in there, they're going to sacrifice you. They're going to kill you." And he's just like, "I know. I want to show them that when you die on this earth, there's another place you can go. You have even more fun. And I want to reveal myself to them from there." And say, look, this is where I'm chipping off to, just in case you think I'm gone. I'm having a great time over here, and I'm going to take this whole life to a much bigger place, and you're all welcome. Just stop killing people. Be nice. It was kind of a subtle message. It was a very simple beautiful message of just like, come on, don't get lost in all these different stories. Don't get lost in all this stuff. We're going to raise the vibration. We're going to connect to a higher, more beautiful place. We're going to see the bigger picture. We're going to align with the cosmos. We're not going to live in fear. We're going to know that we are cosmic beings, and we can cosmically align, and no one's going to take that away from us. And we're going to stand in that love and in that light and in that connectivity and connect with the expansion of something far bigger. Sifin?
So we're just going to have you back every week.
Thank you so much for having me on.
He's coming back in 84 years.
I like the elliptical orbit of ending up back in your van.
That's my question, is what's the next date on your calendar?
Well, I showed you, when I opened this video, I showed you that we'd had in 2017, when I thought it was the big flybys, and we'd seen all the amazing. We were seeing the seismology, we were seeing sightings like they were just absolutely unbelievable. There's so many mega shots, most of them you just would not be able to compute. But we'd seen all the seismology at the beginning, and Trump's inauguration marking, ironically, the beginning of this massive, what I call the Arc of Heaven. Starts from in 1939, finishes in 1944-45. And again, it starts in 2017 and it finishes in 2024, but not the 2024, the January. We've already done that. So now, when we saw at the beginning of this year the Icelandic volcano going off in the northern hemisphere, I knew that was going to happen. I predicted all of that. And I predicted it would stop. It would just be like the kind of flybys in 2021. But when the next big flyby is in for the big exit, which is July, August, that's the main exit corridor. Remembering the Carrington event in 1959 happened in July, August. You know, you think of all your shooting stars. When are you going to see shooting stars, mostly? You know, why? We're told all these crazy, silly little stories to fill in the gap. But when we actually kind of consider, like, the fundamental movement of a sun, and we've got an entrance corridor and an exit corridor. What happens when we go past the exit corridor? And all this stuff churning out, a sun bombing forward, and all this stuff coming in and then going out the other side. That, you know, where's the... It's like, you know, why do the flies always splat on the front windscreen? You know, it's just that just makes it. Why don't they splat on the rear windscreen? It's just that because we don't give motion to our sun in our mind's eye, it's very difficult to understand some fundamental event corridors that are actually occurring in our daily lives. Because we haven't got this, we just live in this kind of bubble of all the planets in this static sun model, not charging forward. We're not connecting in that way. So when is it next happening? I can't say it's going to be the biggest, but it is going to be the biggest so far without any doubt. And it started on when these volcanoes that I just showed you started. It has started. The biggest flyby of Jupiter, we are in it now. It comes and it just gets exponentially bigger and bigger and bigger by the day. It will be exponential. I'm not talking about the end of the world here. I'm talking about a massive increase in volcanic volcanoes, a massive increase in carbon dioxide, a massive increase in storms.
Interesting recently that the ring growth samples of trees, biggest in 2,500 years. Now, the amount of carbon that the planet is now absorbing in tree growth is absolutely phenomenal. And that's right across the planet. So, you know, there are bits of science that cannot actually, you know, deny this incredibly rapid process that we're in. You know, fascinating. It'd be interesting to see if the dates and the times coincide with you know, tree growth and stuff.
Well, it definitely makes sense with the map. With, like I say, with 61 volcanoes simultaneously going off. And you know, I was jumping up and down like 3 years ago when it reached 20, and I was like, "It's 20 volcanoes!" And every time you went on the internet, you were seeing, like I say, rivers of cars washing away. Suddenly, you just seen in Brazil, and kind of like all around the globe, you're just watching whole towns and cities getting washed away. You know what happened on the Yangtze River over the last kind of since 2018 to about 2021, where we just watched it. You know, in 2018 it was like the worst storm since 1998. Then the next year it was the worst storm since 1930, ironically since the discovery of Pluto. Then we're like, oh my God, it's the worst storm for 1,000 years. And next year, oh my God, it's the worst storm on record. Oh my God. And then we get to kind of 2023. And all that happens is the storms are as intense as they were in 2022, but they migrate further north. And now it becomes Beijing, not kind of like not Sichuan, not Wuhan, not all these kind of like provinces deeper in the south of chance. It's moving further up into the northern hemisphere. Now we're starting to see volcanoes waking up in the northern hemisphere. We're seeing the whole mid-Atlantic ridge come alive. We're watching the Atlantic becoming hotter than it's ever been. We're watching more moisture coming up from the Atlantic. We're watching volcanoes going absolutely crazy off the record. And we saw what Obama did when Obama won his Peace Prize when he came into power. before he invaded Libya, and before he started the Ukrainian coup in 2014. Do you remember he won the Nobel Peace Prize for reducing the amount of nuclear weapons? And what he did was he reclassified a warship that say had 20 warheads into one warhead, and that's how he massively took 2 zeros off the amount of warheads America had by just recategorizing them. And they've done the same with volcanoes, where you see a volcano like Kilauea or you see a volcano like Krakatoa, they're boiling them down into one eruption. So when we mount all of the volcanic eruptions since 1986, when Chernobyl went bang, when we had the big storms here, when we were calling it Halley's Comet. Oh, it's Halley's Comet, is it? That old chestnut. And then 12 years later, we're going to see the next comet fly by. Oh, what are we going to call this one? Oh, we're going to call it Comet Halley-Bopp. Oh, and then suddenly we get to, we're going to go 12 years, and suddenly they're not going to be every 12 years. Suddenly we just get saturated with sightings. Well, that's what we're in now. We're in it now. We're in the big passage. We're at the 84-year period.
Confused. We've got the 84-year cycle of the blue Kachina, but the red Kachina is that 400-year cycle?
The red Kachina is actually we sync up with it every 1800 years, and the blue object orbits that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have nothing has on it. There's no planet out there with an 84-year orbit. We just have this idea that when our sun plunges through the ecliptic plane of the big system our sun orbits and then plunges back down, that crossing point between the crossing points is the 84-year period. So it's taking something about 300 years to actually do a full rotation around our sun. We're assuming it's about 300 years. Exactly. But there are only 2 crossing points where everything's coming in on the same ecliptic plane, creating the situations that we're seeing now. This wonderful window that we've seen when we've all suddenly got these most incredible cameras and this thing to be able to capture all this data.
So a good time to watch the sky would be July, August.
Not really. Missed it.
Missed it.
Did you mention the Ponsbrook one that happened on the 2nd of June, just 3 days ago?
Yeah, that's Ponsbrook one is or Comet C12 Ponsbrook is like you can imagine I've watched it every year coming in and being renamed over and over and over. There's 3 planets with twin tails and a big blue planet that I can see. So there's 4 objects. When I finally broke them down, like I said, when I made the video and I said I think we're going to see one of the planets, and then this woman called Becky Lewis caught it on the 28th of March 2011, and she was 2013. No, 28th of March 2016. I'd made the video before, and I said, look guys, keep an eye out for it. We're at the exact 100-day mark, and then it came into view, and then we started seeing the pair at that time over and over and over, and then we started getting all the other alignments, and that's when I noticed that I was 4 days out. I kept being 4 days out, and when in 2016, 2017, I realised that when I put those 2 together, and I put 200 days and 200 days together, and then I counted my correction, my 4-day correction that kept coming up. I kept coming up with 396 days, and this reoccurring 396 days. But I couldn't understand where the correction was falling short. And then I took the 396 and I divided it by 13, and I times it by 12, and I got 365, and I nearly fell off my horse, because when I saw it I was like, oh my god, it's the number of Jupiter. And I started realising that this number of Jupiter kept reoccurring, and when it kept reoccurring I realised that the relative speed of an object defines its orbital relationship. And so all of these objects that were orbiting Jupiter were mimicking the same numerology, because they were Jupiter. They were Jupiter's moons. Can you imagine being so close to the moon of Jupiter with all its objects, and we get so close and they go, boop, 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 and they all shoot round our sun. And you're like, what? They're just, what?
So you say like Neptune and Uranus don't really exist, they're all one planet.
Exactly.
Okay,
Demondo. It's a big one to kind of like, it's a big kind of
So are they the blue planet or Pluto?
They're both there. They're Pluto,
One and the same.
all one and the same.
All one and
The
the same.
reinvention of the same thing over and over to keep you into this little astronomical model where you live in a
So
Christian
the
life.
same planets, but it's just
Yeah.
they're not the different ones.
They're not the different one. They just keep turning up at the wrong place on the wrong side of the solar system.
So
Damn!
Those amazing
Okay, so-
slides you've got
Huh?
of the clouds, if you like, in the sky. They're absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
And that happened in 2016, was it? Did you say?
Yeah. Well, it happened on the 20th of January 2017. I just wasn't, and then we saw. I mean, I could show you so many shots. Some of them would make you
Are they
weep.
on their website?
But yeah, all on the. It's called Dave Dobbs. It's under the name of the Dave Dobbs channel. You're just going to sit there and you're going to see. I've not taken anything down, so you can see the workings
I've
of.
been all over the media.
Oh no! Every time it comes up, they shut down. They run their astronomical stories. Everything's just like unusual cloud.
So what does that mean for all the astrologers who you know?
Well, the original models.
Let it go.
Yeah, the original models I were using was the only way I could explain them was by using Nassim Harameyn's model. And what Nassim Harameyn is doing there in his model is, I don't believe it's correct anymore, but I had to use his model for a long time. And it got me to 2018, where suddenly we got saturated with the most incredible shots. It was just, and I was having to kind of rethink my model and up the game and use kind of more higher end kind of software and get bigger processing machines to number crunch it and go and meet this journey head on. Like, no, we are going to get through it, and here we are in this.
Have we got in the solar system now then?
You know, they're rapidly reducing. They're going down by the day, and then they're coming up in other ways. It's all just gone a little bit. We are in a point where our current astronomical model. I look at our current astronomical model like people in our astronomical model would look at a flat earther. You know, it's as absurd as flat Earth.
So
I've got to let you stop.
we got to lock up, and we've got to get down the
Get down the
we're
pub
gonna
and
go
have a.
We can talk
take
a
it
lot more
further.
there. Yeah. But,
Thank you so much for inviting me to come and talk. I've always wanted to come and talk at the the Glastonbury. You know, people's what do you call it? The good living.
After that talk, you call it everything you like.
PLG, the positive living group. Positive living. You've been doing it for years, and it's just like I feel like I'm part of the family now. So thank you.
Absolutely right.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
I'm just going to say thank you so much for coming. I mean, let's do it again.
Yeah, I'm happy for it.
And yeah, it was a blast. Thank you.
What an amazing journey. I feel that we've all just been doing this. You've taken us on a real adventure tonight. Thank you so much. And thank you all of you for being fantastic as well. Dave, really, we've waited a long time for you to come.
Oh, bless
I
you.
love
Thank you.
your YouTube. Everybody, if you don't know Dave's YouTube channel already, it's called Dave Dobbs. Look it up. There's a great little, when you get the little profile picture, it's a guy with a pipe, and it's really fun. And then you click on, and if you first click on to watch the whole lot, it says it says home or something, and you can't see any videos. And then you click the button that says videos, and there are tons of videos, and they're absolutely fascinating. And I know that he wouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it. Dave does all this incredible research he's not being paid for this, and he does have a Patreon site with a link on his website. So if anyone feels like donating anything, the money that we took tonight on the door will take off expenses and will go to Dave. And
No, you got to keep with that. You got to keep that.
it's
No.
for you. But if anyone would like to contribute anything else for his work, it is keep him going. It's I know
bless
we
you, sir.
incredibly gratefully received. And the other thing I want to say is you referred to your mum a few times, and then you referred to your dad as well. And I found your mum's book in Glastonbury a long time ago, having no idea that was your mum, and finding that so special. And for anybody who didn't know Dave's mother. She was one of the real Glastonbury seers, as I'm sure your father too. You know,
fully cosmic. She left so cosmically. I can remember when they were trying to get her into it. You know, she died during the lockdown, not of COVID, but you know, she was dying of cancer. But the whole thing was hilarious. And they came around and they said, you know, she's got to be in a hospice. I was like, Mum, do you want to die on your own in a hospice? She went, no, love. I was like, no, I think we're all right. Actually, I think we're going to sort it out. And then she said, what about the COVID risk? I was like, Mum, there seems to be a lot of people coming around singing bajams and that sort of stuff when you're not really meant to be doing that. I was like, are you scared someone's going to come around and kill you with COVID? And she went, no, love. It's just the whole thing. And then we televised that, we actually live streamed her whole passing. And when she finally left, everyone said she's gone now. I was like, no, she's completely there. Can't you feel it? She's utterly conscious. She hadn't spoke for a week. And two magic things happened. The first thing happened when she squeezed my hand. And directly when she died, I knew that she was completely there all along. She gave it a little squeeze. And just before she passed, I was... this little girl hadn't slept for would be sleeping 3 hours, 1.5 hour slots, and this little girl appeared before me, and she said, I don't like you. And I looked at her and I was like, I reached in my pocket and I found some money, and I said, I passed her this money, and then she pushed this briefcase towards me and I opened it up and there was all this gold in it. I was like, and she said, you know, it's all for you. I was like, well, what are we doing with that? She said, put it in your rucksack. So I tried to get it in my rucksack. I couldn't get it in my rucksack. So I just thought I'd put it in the bag. I was so excited. I ran out. There was a massive band playing in front of the stage. I ran up to the top of the stage to watch all the stage. And then all the security went crazy. Everyone started running out. There was all this kind of noise, people with guns, everything. I was really scared. And I went running down the hill and suddenly remembered the gold. And I thought, oh my God, my gold, my gold. And I would turn around, I would start running up the hill. Everything's going crazy. Guns are firing. Everyone's panicking. I was like, just get to the gold. And as I went to get to the gold, I could feel myself waking up. And I just heard my mum saying, don't forget to stay on the hill, on the top of the hill with the gold. Don't forget to stay on top of the hill with the gold when the shit hits the fan. Don't go into panic. That's what it is. It's a show. It's a story to make you go into crazy panic, into crazy things, to try and get you to go into a low vibration. Laugh at it. Laugh at it. Just move around it. Navigate around it. If it's your time, it's your time. Just know you're going to go to a good place. No, it's absolutely sorted. They can't take that away from you. They can't take that away from you. Stay up on the hill with the gold. Stay in a good place. It's going to go crazy. You know it's going to go crazy. It's going crazy. It is crazy. Stay in a good place and help your friends and your community stay in a good place. Be prepared to stay in a good place. You have to work it. Even if they're firing a gun and they're emptying the clip at you, you're just like, guys, mate, you don't think I've seen worse than this? Come on, man. I can do this standing on my head.
There you go. You talked about... when you talked about both parents and you referred to your father's experience of the blue light, what can I say? Blue vision parents, a true indigo child. Thank you. Thank you for your beautiful spirit. Thank you. Thank you. Please tell your friends, guys, tell them about his YouTube channel, and let's get an even bigger main hall on another occasion too. But really precious for you to be here tonight. And, like I said, we've waited a long time. And all of you have been brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being so lovely.